Chapter 1. The Gray Drizzle. The rain was a miserable gray sheet, and Elowen zipped her last bag with a final, grim tug. In the hallway, she could hear little Sophie crying, a thin, hiccuping wail that twisted something sharp and unwelcome in Elowen's chest. She hated this part. She was good at her job. Too good. She was the nanny who specialized in difficult children, the one who came in when exhausted parents were at their wits' end. She brought calm, she established routines, and she built trust. Then, just when the child started to smile, just when their small hands started to seek hers for comfort, she left. It was the only way. Elowen forced the stiffness into her spine because warmth was a promise she couldn't keep. Warmth led to attachment, and attachment was a luxury she'd learned, painfully and early, was not for her. She walked into the bright, expensive kitchen. Sophie's mother, Amanda, was waiting with an envelope. She's just devastated, Elowen. Are you absolutely sure you can't stay? Just another month? My contract is fulfilled, Elowen said. Her voice was flat, polite. Practiced. Amanda sighed, frustration warring with a strange, undeniable relief. Elowen saw it clear as day. The relief of a mother who had her child back, but also the relief of seeing the stranger, the one who had succeeded where she failed, finally walk out the door. It was always this way. They hired her for her magic, and they resented her for it, too. Well, Amanda said, sliding the envelope across the granite countertop. Here's your final payment, and a bonus. For everything. Elowen picked it up. Too heavy. The bonus was, as always, generous. It was hush money. It was, thank you for fixing our problem, and please disappear money. Thank you, Mrs. Hart. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye to Sophie. She couldn't. Saying goodbye meant it mattered. An hour later, Elowen sat on a regional bus, the city's neat suburbs dissolving into damp countryside. The rain lashed the window, blurring the passing trees into watery green and brown streaks. The chill of the glass seeped through her thin jacket. She opened the envelope, counted the cash, enough to pay her storage unit fee and live for another 2 months, maybe 3 if she ate instant noodles. She had no home, no family, no safety net. She was the ghost in their hallways, the whisper in their nursery, the memory they would soon forget. This existence was brittle, but it was safe. Her phone, old and cracked, buzzed with a text. It was from the private agency that found her these strange, high-paying gigs. New placement. Urgent. High security clearance required. Location is remote, Blackwood Estate. You will sign an ironclad NDA upon arrival. The subject is a minor. Male. 6 years old. Non-verbal. Elowen frowned. Blackwood. She'd never heard of it. What's the issue? The reply was almost instant. Client is private. Extremely. The previous 6 nannies didn't last the day. The pay is 5 times your usual rate. Per week. Elowen's breath caught. That kind of money wasn't just live for 3 months money. It was start over money. It was a fantasy. But 6 nannies? What could a 6-year-old boy do to make 6 trained professionals quit in a day? Non-verbal. That was new. She'd handled screamers, biters, and throwers. But silence? Silence was different. She thought of Sophie's sobs, the ache in her own chest. Maybe silent was better. Maybe silent meant no connection, no tiny voice to haunt her when she left. This job sounded cold. Professional. Impersonal. Perfect. Send me the details. A secured file appeared. A one-way bus ticket for 2 hours from now, heading deep into the northern wilderness, and a single, stark address. Elowen leaned her head against the vibrating glass. The rain felt like it was washing the whole world away, and she was just a piece of driftwood, heading for another unknown shore. She had to take it because there was no other choice. This was the path she'd carved for herself. Lonely, difficult, and always moving. Chapter 2. The Silent Forest. The bus ride ended where the pavement met the pines. There wasn't a town, not even a gas station. Just a narrow, unmarked gravel road disappearing into a forest so dense it swallowed the daylight. The air smelled different here, sharp with pine, damp earth, and something else. Something musky and wild. Elowen shouldered her single bag, the bus pulling away with a hydraulic hiss, leaving her in a profound, unsettling silence. The gravel crunched under her boots as she walked. The trees were ancient, their branches interlocking high above, creating a canopy that filtered the sky into a dim, green twilight. There were no birds, no squiddies, just the sound of her own breathing and the thud of her heart. After a mile, she saw it. It wasn't a gate. It was a wall, 20 feet of black, wrought iron, spiked at the top, set between massive stone pillars. It looked less like an entrance and more like a declaration of war. A small, sleek camera I swiveled to track her. She approached the call box. Before she could press the button, a voice, metallic and impersonal, crackled from the speaker. "State your name." "Elowen Vance." "From the agency." There was a long pause, filled only by the whisper of the wind through the high branches. Then a heavy clank and a loud buzz. The massive gates swung inward, perfectly silent. The estate on the other side was not what she expected. It wasn't an old, Gothic manor. It was a fortress of modern glass, black steel, and gray stone, built into the side of a hill. It was severe, beautiful, and utterly cold. It absorbed the light. She walked the long, winding drive, feeling exposed. The silence was heavier here, pressing in on her. What kind of person built a place like this, not just for privacy, but for isolation? What kind of child grew up here? The front door, a solid slab of dark wood that looked centuries old, opened just as she reached the top step. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, built like a mountain, with a stark, scarred face and eyes of strange, pale gold. He wore a simple black uniform, but he was no butler. He radiated a quiet, lethal energy. "Miss Vance." His voice was a low rumble. "Follow me. Do not touch anything." Elowen stepped inside. The foyer was vast, the floor a sea of polished black marble that reflected the gray light from a ceiling-high window. The air was cold, sterile. "The Alpha, the man," Silas began. He never finished the sentence. A blur of motion exploded from the shadows of a wide staircase. It was small, fast, and low to the ground. Elowen only had time to gasp before it hit her, slamming into her legs and knocking her off balance. She fell hard onto the marble, her bag skittering away. It was the boy. He was small for 6, dressed in sleep clothes, his black hair a tangled mess. And he was feral. He wasn't crying or yelling. He was snarling, a deep, guttural sound that shouldn't have been possible from a child. He scrambled onto her, his movements jerky and inhumanly fast, all limbs and teeth. Before Elowen or Silas could react, the boy lunged for her arm and bit down. Hard. A scream of pure, sharp agony tore from Elowen's throat. It wasn't a nip. It wasn't a protest. It was an attack. She could feel the shocking, wet heat as his small, impossibly strong teeth broke the skin of her forearm. "Rowan, no!" Silas barked, moving forward. But Elowen didn't try to push him off. The pain was white-hot, blinding, but through it, she saw his eyes. They were wide, terrified, and filled with a desperate, animalistic panic. He wasn't just angry. He was terrified. He was cornered. He was utterly lost. This wasn't malice. It was pure, unfiltered fear. She didn't scream again, because screaming was for victims, and she had sworn she would never be one again. Instead, ignoring the blood now welling up around the bite, she slowly, so slowly, lifted her other hand. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling from the shock. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The boy froze. His snarling hitched. He was still latched on her arm, but the pressure eased, just a fraction. And then a new presence entered the room, a cold so profound it froze the blood in her veins. Chapter 3. The word that changed everything. That cold presence solidified into a man. He didn't just walk into the foyer. He consumed it. The air crackled and grew thin, the shadows seeming to deepen and stretch toward him. He was impossibly tall, broad-shouldered in a way that spoke of raw, coiled power beneath his expensive black shirt. His hair was as black as the boy's, his face a mask of harsh, striking angles and severe control. But his eyes were silver. Not gray, not blue. They were the color of moonlight on steel, and they were fixed on the scene with a chilling, murderous calm. This was the Alpha. He didn't look at Elowen. He didn't even look at the man, Silas. He looked at the mess, at his feral son clamped onto the arm of a bleeding stranger, staining his marble floor. Silas. The alpha's voice was a low growl, a sound that vibrated in Elowen's bones. Remove her. Now. Remove her. Not help her. Not get the boy. Rage, sharp and sudden, cut through Elowen's pain. All her self-preservation, every instinct honed from a life of running, screamed at her to get up, to flee this cold, monstrous house and its cold, monstrous owner. But the boy, Rowan, was still attached to her. He was trembling, the snarls replaced by frantic, choked whimpers against her skin. He was terrified of the man who had just entered. Ignoring the alpha, ignoring the order, Elowen kept her eyes on the small, shaking form. Shoo, she murmured, the sound quiet in the vast, tense space. You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you. No one is going to hurt you. At her voice, Rowan went utterly still. Slowly, agonizingly, he lifted his head. The feral light in his eyes that were a perfect, miniature copy of the alpha's silver, was fading, replaced by a vast, watery confusion. He stared at her, his gaze intense, searching. He let go of her arm. The sudden release of pressure made Elowen hiss. Blood, bright red, ran down her sleeve. Rowan didn't pull away. He crawled closer, his movements shaky. He was still on her, his small knee digging into her stomach. He reached out one grimy, small hand, hesitated, and then, so gently, laid his palm against her cheek. His skin was warm. Elowen's breath hitched. She couldn't move. She was trapped by the alpha's menace and the child's desperate, silent question. Then, Rowan leaned in, his forehead almost touching hers. A sound tore from his throat. It was rusty, dry, like a hinge that hadn't been used in years. A single, hoarse whisper. Mom! The word hung in the absolute, ringing silence. Silas froze, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. The alpha, Kaelan, moved. His head snapped toward Elowen. The icy control shattered. His silver eyes blazed, and for a second, she swore they flashed a brilliant, inhuman gold. He took one stalking step forward, a growl ripping from his chest that was not human. It was the sound of a predator, a warning, a threat. What, he snarled, did you do to him? Shock? Pure, undiluted shock. Elowen couldn't find her voice. Her arm throbbed, her mind reeled. The boy, his son, clung to her shirt, hiding his face in her shoulder as if she were his shield. How could one word, one tiny, impossible word, seal her fate so completely? Kaelan stopped just feet away. The power rolling off him was suffocating, a physical weight that demanded she bow. He was staring at his son, who was clinging to this stranger. Elowen knew, with chilling certainty, that this man could kill her, and no one would ever know. But Kaelan stared because the sound of his son's voice was a ghost he had long since buried. Rowan had not spoken, not one word, not one sound, in 3 years. Not since the night his mother, the Luna, had been torn apart by rogues. Now this woman, this bleeding, defiant, insignificant human, had broken that silence with a single touch. She was an anomaly. She was a threat. And she was suddenly the only thing in the world that mattered. Kaelan's expression hardened, the shock replaced by a ruthless, calculating possession. Silas, he commanded, his voice deadly quiet. Take her to the medical wing. Clean her up. Elowen tensed, expecting the next words to be and throw her out. She's not leaving, the alpha stated. He looked at Elowen, his silver eyes pinning her to the floor. You will stay. You'll find out why he said that, and you will fix him. It wasn't a job offer. It was a sentence. This was not a job. This was a prison. This was a puzzle. This was a trap. Elowen was trapped, bound not by the alpha's command, but by the impossible hope in a feral child's eyes. Chapter 4. The Scent of Sleep. The antiseptic burned. A woman with a kind face and the same dead silent energy as Silas finished stitching Elowen's arm. The bite was deep. The woman, who Elowen learned was named Dr. Alana, had cleaned it, her touch surprisingly gentle. You're lucky, Alana murmured, taping a thick gauze pad over the wound. His canine teeth are, well, they're sharp. He's just a child, Elowen said, her voice tight. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a deep, trembling exhaustion. Dr. Alana paused. Her eyes, a warm hazel, met Elowen's. He hasn't been just a child for a very long time, Miss Vance. There was a world of sorrow in that sentence. Your room is ready. It's adjoining the medical wing. The room was beautiful, far too beautiful for a nanny. Soft gray walls, a bed piled high with plush white blankets, a window overlooking a dark, moonlit courtyard. It felt like a gilded cage. Elowen sat on the edge of the bed, the silence of the massive house pressing in. Fix him, Kaelan had ordered. How? How did she fix a child broken by a man who seemed just as shattered? That single, impossible word, Mom, echoed in her head. It was a plea, a mistake, a brand. She was a prisoner. She knew that. This wasn't a job she could quit. The iron gates were not just for keeping people out. Elowen finally lay back, too tired to even change out of the clothes she'd arrived in, now stained with her own blood. Sleep pulled her under, heavy and dark. She woke to a noise. A faint scratch at her door. Elowen's heart hammered. She sat up, her good arm reaching for a lamp. Anything to use as a weapon. The house was silent. The rogues? An attack? Scratch. It was quiet. Furtive. She slid off the bed, her bare feet cold on the hardwood floor. She crept to the door, her breath held tight in her chest. She pressed her ear to the wood. A tiny, choked whimper. She unlocked it and pulled the door open just a crack. Rowan stood in the dark hallway. He was alone, bathed in the pale moonlight from a distant window. He was holding a worn, three-legged stuffed wolf. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. He was sleepwalking. Before she could speak, he pushed past her, walking with a zombie-like certainty into her room. He didn't look at her. He didn't seem to know she was there. He just walked to the bed, climbed onto the mattress, and burrowed under the heavy blankets. He curled into a tight, small ball on the far side, his back to the room. Elowen stood, stunned, her hand still on the doorknob. Her no-attachment rule, the one that had been her armor for a decade, felt like it was cracking right down the middle. This wasn't a job. This was something else. He is not to leave his wing. Kaelan's voice, a low and dangerous rumble, came from the shadows of the hall. Elowen jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. He was just there, a massive silhouette filling the corridor. He had moved with absolutely no sound. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring, thunderstruck, at the small lump under her blankets. He was sleepwalking. Elowen whispered, her voice trembling. Kaelan moved into the room, bringing the chill of the night with him. His silver eyes were unreadable. He does not sleepwalk. He does not sleep. He moved toward the bed, his intention clear, to take the boy. Don't, Elowen said, louder this time. She put herself between the alpha and the bed. It was a stupid, suicidal move. He could snap her in half. You'll scare him. He's finally resting. Kaelan stopped. His gaze dropped from the bed to her. He looked at this small, defiant human standing in his way, protecting his son. He took a slow breath, his nostrils flaring. Elowen felt it, a strange, prickling heat on her skin. He was scenting her. The air in the room changed, growing thick and electric. His silver eyes darkened to charcoal. He was looking at her, really looking at her, and the intensity of it made her feel pinned. He was a predator, and she was something new in his territory. His wolf, the animal she'd glimpsed in his snarl, was staring out from behind his eyes. It was curious. It was assessing. And it was interested. He saw his son, peaceful for the first time in 3 years, curled up next to a stranger who smelled of rain and antiseptic, and, underneath it all, something impossibly clean and warm. The alpha was at war with the wolf, and the father was just broken. He stays, Kaelan growled, the words ripped from him. Tonight, you will not leave this room. He turned and was gone, vanishing back into the shadows. Elowen was left shaking, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. She looked at the sleeping boy. Her arm ached. She was trapped by the feral child and his monster of a father. Slowly, she walked to the bed and slid under the covers on the very edge, as far from the boy as she could get. It didn't matter. In his sleep, Rowan whimpered, uncurled, and shuffled across the mattress until his small, cold feet pressed against her leg. Chapter 5. Rules of the Cage. Elowen woke to an empty bed. The morning light was gray and thin. For a confused second, she thought she'd dreamed it. The bite, the alpha, the child in her bed. But the indentation on the pillow next to her was deep, and her arm, when she unwrapped the bandage, looked wrong. The bite marks were there, a perfect, vicious set of small punctures. But the skin wasn't red or swollen. It was a pale, shiny pink. It looked like it had been healing for a week, not 12 hours. A cold knot of fear formed in her stomach. What was in that boy? Silas arrived with a breakfast tray and a neat stack of folded clothes, simple black trousers, a soft gray sweater. "The Alpha's orders," he rumbled, placing the tray on a desk. "Where is Rowan?" Elowen asked, pulling the blanket tighter. "The young master is in his wing. You are to remain here." The cage. She was right. Rage, cold and sharp, cut through her fear. "I'm not a prisoner. I was hired as a nanny. How can I fix him?" She spat the words Kaelan had used. "If I'm locked in a room?" She stood up, defiant. "I need to see his space, his routine, his triggers. I need to understand his world. The Alpha's world is not for you to understand. Then he can find another nanny to fail." "I do not think you understand, Miss Vance." Silas's pale gold eyes were almost pitying. "You are no longer an option. You are a necessity." The boy spoke. The click of the door signaled Kaelan's arrival. He filled the doorway, his presence sucking the air from the room. He wore the same severe black as yesterday, but he looked ragged. Dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He had not slept. "You will not make demands in my house," he said, his voice flat and cold. "And you will not treat me like a prisoner." Elowen shot back, surprising herself with her own fire. "You want me to help your son? He's not a pet. He's a traumatized child who needs more than a guard and a sterile room. He needs consistency. He needs sunlight. I know what my son needs." Kaelan roared, the sound vibrating in her chest. "Do you?" she challenged, her voice dropping. "He bit me because he expected me to hurt him." "Who taught him that, Kaelan?" The silence that followed was a living thing. Kaelan's silver eyes flashed, and he crossed the room in 2 long, predatory strides. He stopped, towering over her, forcing her to crane her neck to look up at him. He was using his size, his sheer power, to intimidate her, to crush her. "You," he seethed, "will learn your place. My place is with him. I have no place here at all. You have no choice. You think I'll let you walk out that gate, knowing what you know? Carrying a scent that my son now associates with her." The last word was choked. He was talking about his dead wife. The air was so thick, so charged, Elowen could barely breathe. He was angry. He was grieving. And he was terrified. "Your observations," he growled, "are noted, but they are irrelevant." He raised a hand, a dismissive, angry gesture to wave her away. Elowen flinched. Her flinch made him pause. His hand stopped, hovering in the air between them, and his fingers, long and calloused, accidentally grazed the healing, pink skin of her bite. Zap! A jolt, white-hot, blinding, shot up Elowen's arm, straight to her heart, which stopped and then restarted with a painful thud. Kaelan gasped, snatching his hand back as if he'd touched a live wire. They stared at each other. It wasn't a spark. It was a connection, a raw, pulling, undeniable current of energy. Elowen felt dizzy, her knees weak. Kaelan looked at his own hand, then back at her face. The mask of the cold alpha was gone. In its place was raw, unfiltered shock. And something else, a dark, unwelcome hunger that mirrored the one suddenly screaming through her own veins. His pupils were blown wide, the silver irises almost gone. A muscle in his jaw jumped. "What?" he whispered, his voice dangerously rough. "Are you?" He backed away, 1 step, then 2. The predator was suddenly wary. He looked at her not as a human, but as a trap. "Stay away from me," he snarled. It wasn't an order for her. It was a command for himself. He turned and fled the room, slamming the door so hard a crack appeared in the plaster. Elowen collapsed onto the bed, her body trembling. Her arm, the bite, was itching. It was burning with a heat that had nothing to do with healing and everything to do with him. Chapter 6. The sound of breaking glass. For 2 days, Elowen was a ghost in a sealed wing. Kaelan did not return. Silas brought her meals, his scarred face impassive. But her demand, it seemed, had been heard. A new door was unlocked, connecting her room to a large, sterile playroom. And Rowan was there. He sat in the corner, building a tower of wooden blocks. He didn't look up when she entered, but he didn't snarl. He didn't hide. He just existed. This was her new routine. She would sit on the floor on the opposite side of the room and simply talk. "My name is Elowen," she said to the silent air. "I like the color blue and rain, but not this cold, gray rain. I like the kind that smells like summer." Rowan's hands stilled for a second. Then he continued to build. She did this for hours. She never asked him a question. She never demanded his attention. She just was. She was a safe, constant presence. On the third day, Kaelan appeared. He didn't enter the playroom. He stood in the doorway, a dark, brooding statue. He was watching. Elowen could feel the burn of his silver eyes on her back. He'd been restless, she knew, because of that jolt of energy. She felt it too. A constant, humming awareness of him in the house. Rowan felt it too. The moment Kaelan appeared, the boy's shoulders tensed. The small block in his hand trembled. "He needs to be outside," Elowen said, not turning around. "He needs to feel the sun. He's wilting in here, Kaelan. He is safe in here." Kaelan's voice rumbled from the doorway. "Safe," Elowen said, finally looking over her shoulder, "is not the same as living." Kaelan's jaw tightened. He was about to argue. Crash. The sound was apocalyptic. The massive, floor-to-ceiling window that made up the far wall, reinforced, bulletproof glass, exploded inward. Shards and slivers of 1,000 knives blasted into the room. Elowen didn't think. She moved. Instinct, raw, primal, and totally new, took over. A man was vaulting through the shattered frame. He was huge, his eyes pure black, his face twisted in a snarl that was not human. Claws, long and filthy, were extended. A rogue. He was lunging for the smallest, most vulnerable person in the room. He was lunging for Rowan. "No!" Elowen screamed. She threw her body, covering Rowan's small, frozen form, shielding him with her own back as glass rained down. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the impact, for the claws to tear her apart. A blur, a sound, a wet, vicious tearing, and a guttural roar that shook the very foundation of the building. Elowen opened her eyes. Kaelan stood over her, his back to her. He was changed. His hands were no longer hands. They were tipped in thick, black claws. Fangs, long and deadly, extended from his mouth. His silver eyes were glowing, lit from within by a terrifying, feral light. The intruder was impaled on Kaelan's arm, his claws driven straight through the rogue's chest. It was over in 2 seconds. The rogue gurgled, black eyes wide with shock, and then went limp. Kaelan ripped his arm free and let the body slump to the floor. He stood there, panting, the primal rage still burning in him. Blood, dark and thick, dripped from his claws onto the floor. Then he turned. He looked at Elowen, who was trembling, her arms still locked around his son. The feral, glowing light in his eyes wavered. He saw her. He saw her shielding the pup. He saw her, covered in glass dust, terrified, but there. She hadn't run. She had protected. The animal in him, the wolf, saw her, and it recognized her. A new alarm, high and piercing, began to wail through the house. Silas was at the door, his face pale. "Alpha!" It was a diversion. "The south perimeter is breached. They're in." The rage snapped back into Kaelan's face, replaced by the cold, hard mask of the Alpha. "Lock it down," he commanded. "Get them to the safe room. Now." He looked back at Elowen. The air between them was thick with adrenaline, with blood, with the scent of ozone from the broken security. "You," he growled, the word a possessive, dark promise. "You're not going anywhere." She wasn't his nanny. She wasn't his prisoner. She was the one his wolf had just seen protecting his heir. And that made her, whether she liked it or not, his. Chapter 7. The Weight of a Spoon. The safe room was underground, silent, and smelled of scrubbed concrete and ozone. Following the breach, they'd spent 3 hours in the titanium-walled bunker. Kaelan had vanished with Silas and a team of scarred, silent men, leaving Elowen alone on a metal bench with a sleeping Rowan. The child hadn't woken for the alarms, not even for the explosion. He had simply slept through the chaos, his face buried in her sweater. Now, in the gray morning light, the new reality was setting in. Elowen was no longer a nanny. She was a fixture. She was the one the pup clung to. This new dynamic was painfully clear in the main kitchen. It was a vast, stainless steel room, cold and joyless. Dr. Alana was there, trying to coax Rowan to eat. "Just one bite, Rowan. Just some oatmeal," Alana said, her voice strained with false brightness. Rowan sat at the huge, empty table, his small feet dangling. He was staring at the wall, his face a perfect, empty mask. He refused the spoon. He refused the juice. He was a statue of silent rebellion. Kaelan stood in the doorway, a thundercloud of frustration. His arms were crossed over his broad chest. He had not slept. He was watching his son starve himself, a small, impossible defiance he couldn't break. "He has not eaten in 2 days." Kaelan's voice was a low, rough gravel. He wasn't speaking to Alana. He was speaking to Elowen. Elowen felt the weight of his gaze. It was an order. Fix this. A tremor of her old fear, the fear of attachment, ran through her. This was the trap. This was how they pulled her in. First, they needed her. Then, they loved her. Then they left. But this was different. She looked at Rowan. He was so small, so lost in this house of steel and shadow. He wasn't a job. He was a castaway. "May I try?" Elowen asked. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension. Alana looked at Kaelan. He gave a single, sharp nod. Alana gratefully slid the bowl of oatmeal toward Elowen and retreated from the room, because the alpha's tension was a thing no one wanted to be near. Kaelan remained, a sentinel of judgment, in the doorway. Elowen sat down, not across from Rowan, but next to him on the same side of the table. She didn't pick up the spoon. She didn't look at the boy. She looked at the bowl. "I'm not very hungry either," Elowen said softly to the oatmeal. "This all feels too big." Rowan's head twitched, a tiny, almost invisible motion. "When I was small," Elowen continued, her voice a low murmur, "I used to hide under my bed. It felt safer there. The world was too loud. Does it feel loud to you too?" She picked up the spoon and dipped it into the thick gray paste. She held it, not offering it, just looking at it. "I pretend, sometimes. I pretend I'm made of stone, so nothing can hurt me." She glanced at the boy. His silver eyes, a perfect mirror of his father's, were watching her. He wasn't looking at the wall anymore. "But stone gets cold," Elowen whispered. "And so heavy, and stone can't eat." She held the spoon out, not to his mouth. She just rested her hand on the table, the spoon offered. It was his choice. Rowan stared at the spoon for a long, agonizing minute. The entire, massive house seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, his small, grimy hand reached out. He didn't take the spoon. He wrapped his fingers around Elowen's wrist. His grip was small, but surprisingly strong. He leaned forward and, with a shuddering breath, took the oatmeal from the spoon. He ate. A sound, like a choked gasp, came from the doorway. Elowen looked up. Kaelan was staring at the simple, profound act, his son, eating, but he was also staring at Rowan's hand, wrapped possessively around Elowen's arm. The alpha's face was a complex, warring mask of relief, pain, and a dark, sharp-edged jealousy that was almost primitive. Rowan had chosen her. Kaelan turned, his broad shoulders stiff, and left the kitchen. The pounding of his boots on the marble floor echoed, a rhythm of retreat. The new reality settled around Elowen, cold and undeniable. She was feeding his child, she was sleeping in his house, and she was trapped in the crossfire of a grief she could not understand. Chapter 8. The Lessons of the Wolf. She is a weak point. Elowen overheard the words from the hallway. It was Silas's low rumble, coming from Kaelan's office. "She is a human," Kaelan's voice returned, sharp as glass. The robe went through a reinforced window. What was she supposed to do? She is a distraction. Alpha. She cannot protect herself, so you must. That makes you vulnerable. There was a long, dangerous silence. Elowen pressed herself into the alcove, her heart hammering. Rowan was in his playroom, finally calm. She had been on her way to the library. The office door slammed open. Kaelan stood there, his silver eyes blazing. He had known she was there. He had known she was listening. "Come with me," he commanded. He didn't wait for a reply. He strode down the hall, his long legs eating up the ground. Elowen had to almost run to keep up. He led her out of the house, into the cold, damp air of the estate. The sky was a heavy, gray lid. He took her to a wide, muddy circle, ringed by thick wooden posts. "A training ring. Silas is right," Kaelan said, his voice flat. He stripped off his heavy jacket, revealing the black shirt that clung to his powerful torso. The cold air didn't seem to touch him. "You are a liability. That ends today." "I'm not a fighter," Elowen protested, crossing her arms, more for warmth than defiance. "I'm a nanny." "You are nothing," he growled. "If you are dead, and you live in my house, you will learn." He stalked to the center of the ring. "The first lesson is not to fight. It is to feel. Rogues, shifters, we move with intent. We hunt. Humans, you blunder. You are loud in your scent and your sound." "I don't know what that means." "It means," he said, and he was suddenly right in front of her, "you rely on your eyes. That is your first mistake." His proximity was suffocating. He smelled of pine, of ozone, and that same wild musk that was uniquely his. It made her head swim. "Close your eyes." "What?" "Close them," he roared. She flinched and squeezed her eyes shut. The world vanished, replaced by the sound of the wind, the damp chill, and his breathing. He was too close. "You are blind," he murmured, his voice now a low, hypnotic rumble. "Now listen. Feel the air. I am going to move. You will tell me where I am." She heard nothing, but then a shift. The air on her left cheek felt emptier. The heat of him was gone. "You moved," she whispered, "to my left." She heard a soft huff. Again, he moved. This time, she felt the displacement of air behind her. Her skin prickled. "Behind me." "Good." She opened her eyes. He was standing an arm's length away. "Now block." He moved, a blur. His hand lanced out, not to hit her, but to grab her. She was too slow. Her reflexes were human. His were other. He caught her by the shoulders. His grip was iron. "You are dead," he stated, his voice flat. "I told you I'm not." Again, he let her go and moved. She tried to block, to spin, but he was always faster. He was a shadow, a current of air. He never hit her. He just anticipated her. He would grab her wrist, her shoulder. His hand would stop an inch from her throat. Frustration, hot and acidic, burned in her. She was sick of being weak, sick of being a liability. "Again," he commanded, moving in. "No," she yelled, and this time she didn't block. She did what she'd done her whole life. She shoved. She put all her weight into his chest, trying to push him away. It was like pushing a brick wall, but surprised him. He hadn't expected her to attack him. His own balance was off. He stumbled back, and his hand shot out to steady himself by grabbing her. He pulled her hard. Elowen fell forward, right into his chest, her hands trapped between them. The world stopped. She was pressed against a wall of unyielding muscle and furnace-like heat. Her cheek was against his shirt, and she could feel the frantic, heavy thud of his heart. Or maybe it was hers. He was frozen. His arms were locked around her, his hands splayed on her back. And the spark, the jolt they'd felt in her room, was back. It wasn't a spark. It was a forest fire. It roared up her spine, hot, electric, and pulling. She felt it in her teeth, in her blood. Her good hand, pressed against his chest, burned. "Kaelan," she gasped, her voice strangled. He looked down. His silver eyes were black, the pupils completely blown. He was staring at her, his expression one of pure, agonizing conflict. He wanted this. His wolf wanted this. He lowered his head just an inch. His breath, hot and shaky, fanned her cheek. She could feel his fangs just behind his lips, aching to descend. "This," he rasped, his voice a broken thing, "is the real danger." He was going to kiss her. She knew it. She knew it. And her body, starved of touch, of warmth, her entire life, leaned in. "No." With a snarl that was pure animal, Kaelan shoved her away. He stumbled back, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. He looked at her with a dawning horror. "Get out," he seethed. "Get back in the house. Now." Elowen scrambled backward, her legs trembling. She turned and ran, her heart pounding with a new, far more dangerous kind of fear. Chapter 9. The Shadow on the Wall. For a week, Kaelan avoided her. This new, fragile piece was almost worse than the conflict. He was a brooding, unseen presence. Silas would appear with a message. The Alpha requests you keep Rowan in the North Wing. Or Dr. Alana would arrive with a new salve for her arm. The bite was now just a pale, silver tracery of scars. It should have been gone, but it remained. A mark. Elowen's life found a strange, quiet rhythm. It was a rhythm built entirely around Rowan. The child was her shadow. He was still silent, but he was no longer empty. He followed her from the playroom to the library. When she sat, he would sit at her feet, leaning his small back against her legs. He brought her his broken toys. He even once took her hand. This small, warm hand in hers was a new kind of terror. It was an anchor. It was the very attachment she had spent her entire life fleeing. This evening, she was in the grand, two-story library, a fire crackling in the massive hearth. Rowan was asleep on a velvet couch, his three-legged wolf clutched in his hand. Elowen had found a book of old fairy tales and was reading, her voice a low murmur in the quiet room. That's when she heard the voices. They were low, urgent, coming from the hallway just outside the library door, which was open just a crack. It was Kaelan and Silas. The border patrols are doubled, Silas said, his voice a low rumble. But the scent is old. They were here, Alpha. They were here, and we never knew it. They weren't hunting. Kaelan's voice was tight, lethal. They were watching. Elowen froze. Her blood went cold. The rogue we caught, Silas continued, the one in the playroom. His claws were dipped, not in silver, in wolfsbane. A pause. The fire crackled, loud in the sudden silence. He wasn't there for the boy, Kaelan whispered, his voice raw with a terrible realization. He was there for her. The wolfsbane was for me. Elowen's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. They used the rogue as a distraction. Kaelan's mind was clearly working, fast and cold. They sent him in to test our response, to see who would protect the boy. And what did they see? They saw me shift. They saw me defend her. They saw her as the new Luna, Silas stated, his voice grim. They saw her as my weakness, Kaelan corrected, his voice a snarl. And they will come for her. This rival Alpha, this cur who sends spies, he thinks he can take what is mine by threatening an unarmed human. A cold dread, heavier than she had ever known, washed over Elowen. This wasn't just about her. This wasn't about Rowan. This was about pack politics, about rivalries she couldn't understand. She was a pawn. She was the bait in a trap she hadn't even known was set. Kaelan's next words sealed her fate. He is wrong, the Alpha growled, his voice dropping to a possessive, dark promise. She is not his bait. She is mine. Find them, Silas. Find every shadow on my land. I want them brought to me. And the woman? She's to be moved to the Alpha's wing. My wing, Kaelan commanded. She will not be out of my sight. She is no longer a nanny. She is a target. Elowen looked at the sleeping boy, his face peaceful in the firelight. She had come here to escape attachment. Now, her life, Rowan's life, and the cold, terrifying heart of the Alpha were all tangled in a war she had just realized had already begun. The romance of the training yard was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of danger. Her life was now forfeit to his. Chapter 10. The Shape of a Nightmare. The Alpha's wing was a world of glass, steel, and suffocating silence. It was not a home. It was the high tower of a king, built to watch for enemies. Elowen's new room was separated from Kaelan's by a thick, heavy door. Rowan's room was on her other side, a small, insulated box. They were a strange, broken triangle. Kaelan was a ghost in his own space. She would hear him sometimes in the dead of night. The heavy, restless padding of his feet on the hardwood floor. A low, frustrated growl. A glass being set down, too hard, on a table. He was a storm held just offshore, and she was trapped on the beach. This proximity was a new kind of torture. It was an intimacy they had not earned. She could smell his scent, that sharp, pine and musk scent, clinging to the very air she breathed. It made her skin prickle. It made her feel restless. Rowan, however, had blossomed in the new space. He seemed to understand that this was the center of power. This was safe. He no longer sat in a corner. He explored. He followed Elowen, his small hand often finding its way into hers. One night, Elowen awoke to a sound that was not a restless alpha. It was a scream. It was high-pitched, thin, and pure terror. Elowen was out of bed in a second, her heart seizing. She ran into the hall, colliding with a solid wall of muscle in the dark. Kaelan. He grabbed her arms, his fingers like iron bands, steadying her. "It's Rowan," he growled. He was already moving, his heat and power a tangible thing in the dark corridor. They burst into Rowan's room together. The boy was thrashing in his bed, his blankets tangled around him. He was not crying. He was snarling. His eyes were wide open, glassy and unfocused, staring at a corner of the room. "Rogue," he hissed, the word a dry, terrified rasp. "In a glass." "Mom." Elowen's blood ran cold. Kaelan froze, his face a mask of agony. "He's dreaming," he whispered. "It's the night. He's reliving it." "Rowan," Elowen said, moving forward. "Stay back," Kaelan commanded. "When he is like this, he is not himself." But Elowen ignored him. She saw the child, not the animal. She sat on the edge of the bed. Rowan's eyes snapped to her, but he didn't seem to see her. He lunged, his small hands curled into claws. Elowen didn't flinch. She caught his wrists. "I'm here," she said, her voice firm but soft. "You are safe. There is no one in the glass. It's just me. It's Elowen." Rowan fought her, his small body trembling with a strength that was not human. "No, get out. He's coming." "He is not," Kaelan said. His voice was a low, deep rumble of pure command. The sound of the alpha. Rowan froze. Kaelan sat on the other side of the bed. He was so large, he dwarfed the small frame. He didn't touch his son. He couldn't. "You are safe, my pup," Kaelan said, and his voice was raw with a grief that tore at Elowen's chest. "I am here." Rowan was panting, caught between the nightmare and the two adults. His wild eyes darted from his father's pained, harsh face to Elowen's steady one. Elowen slowly, gently, pulled one of his hands from her grasp. She laid it on her chest, over her own heart. "Feel that," she whispered. "It's steady. It's real. You are right here. You are in your bed." Rowan's fingers uncurled. He splayed his small hand against her. He felt her breathing. He felt the warmth. He turned and buried his face in her lap, a deep, shuddering sob racking his body. Elowen's hand stroked his hair. She looked up, and her eyes met Kaelan's over the child's head. The silver in his gaze was wet. He was not the alpha. He was just a father, watching another person comfort his son in a way he had long forgotten. His hand, large and scarred, moved across the blanket. It covered hers. The spark. It was not a jolt this time. It was a slow, deep, impossible warmth. It was a current of pure, shared something, relief, pain, understanding. It was the first time she had ever felt truly connected to another living soul. His thumb brushed the back of her hand. A shared silence. They sat like that for an hour, a broken, strange family guarding a child's sleep. The air was thick with conflicted desire, with tentative trust. His mother, Kaelan's voice, was a bare whisper in the dark. She sang to him. I do not remember the song. "It's okay," Elowen whispered back, her throat tight. "We can find a new one." Kaelan's eyes held hers, a universe of pain and a terrifying, dawning hope in them. Just as the silence settled into something comfortable, the door creaked. Silas stood in the shadow, his face grim. "Alpha," he whispered, his voice urgent. "Forgive me, but you need to hear this. The patrols, they're hearing rumors from the border towns. A rival pack is spreading tales." Kaelan's hand tightened on Elowen's. "What tales?" "They are not calling her human. Alpha," Silas said, his golden eyes flicking to Elowen, full of a new, strange fear. "They're calling her a lost mark." Chapter 11. The Dormant Blood. A lost mark. Elowen stood in Kaelan's study, the door firmly shut. Rowan was asleep. Finally, the nightmare passed. Now, the new one was just beginning. Kaelan was behind his massive desk, but he wasn't sitting. He was pacing. A caged lion. "What does it mean?" Elowen demanded. You brought me here. You locked me in your wing. You said I was a target. I deserve to know why. What am I? You are a human, Kaelan growled. But his voice lacked conviction. He kept glancing at her, at the pale, silvery scars on her forearm. No, Elowen said, her voice shaking. She held her arm out. Humans don't heal like this. Humans don't. I don't feel that jolt when they touch someone. And your son knew me. He called me Mom. What? Kaelan stopped pacing. He stared at the mark on her arm. Rowan's bite. It should have healed. Perfectly. Or it should have festered. Leaking saliva. It is potent. On a human, it is a poison. On one of us, it heals. But on me, she whispered, her heart hammering. On me, it's scarred. It is a legend, Kaelan said, his voice rough. A nursery story. We are told of them, but no one has seen one in 5 generations. Seen what? She yelled, her patience gone. Dormant lichens, he roared, slamming his hand on the desk. The sound cracked through the room. Humans born with the blood of the wolf, but no wolf of their own. The blood is asleep. Locked away. Elowen stared, her mind reeling. That's impossible. That's a myth. I'm just me. I grew up in foster care. I'm from Ohio. Your blood does not care where you are from. Kaelan stalked around the desk. He was radiating heat. It is the only explanation. It explains the jolt. It explains the scar. It explains why my son's wolf, his instinct, recognized you as kin. So what? Elowen said, backing away. So I'm what? A werewolf light. You are a bomb, he said, his voice deadly serious. The legends say the dormant blood can only be awakened, that the wolf can only be called by one thing. A cold dread filled her. She didn't want this. This was not the simple, lonely life she had built. This was a nightmare. What one thing? Kaelan looked at her. The anger was gone, replaced by a terrible, agonizing realization. He was looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time. A fated mate, he whispered. The call of the true bond. The room spun. Elowen grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. No, Elowen, he said, his voice raw. No, absolutely not. She was shaking her head, terror rising in her throat. I'm not your fated mate. I am not. I'm not anything to you. I am your nanny. I am your prisoner. Do you think I want this? He snarled, his own control breaking. My fated mate, my Luna, was killed. She was torn apart defending my son. Fate is a cruel, stupid joke. It does not exist. Then what was that spark? She cried. I do not know, he yelled. But it is real. And the rival Alpha, Volkov, his spies have seen it. They have seen my son cling to you. They have seen me protect you. They do not think you are human. They think you are a lost mark, a leakin without a pack, a prize to be claimed. This was the true midpoint. The ground had vanished from beneath her feet. She wasn't just a nanny in danger. She was a thing, a legend, a prize in a war. And the man in front of her, the man she was feeling a terrifying, undeniable pull toward, was not just an alpha. He was the one man who could, with a single touch, destroy her entire world. Or he was the only one who could unlock it. This changes nothing, Elowen said, her voice a cold, hard shell she was building around her terror. I'm not a wolf. I am not your fated anything. It changes everything, Kaelan growled. He advanced on her, his silver eyes blazing. It means you're not a weak point. You are a weapon. You just don't know how to use it. And Volkov, he wants to claim you because he knows it will break me. Or he wants to awaken you himself. A new, violation-filled horror crashed over her. This bond, Kaelan said, his voice dropping. It is not a romance, Elowen. It is a battlefield, and you are now the most valuable thing on it. Chapter 12. The Wolf in the Glass. She was suffocating. The revelation, dormant leakin, fated mate, was a stone in her throat. She had to get out. She fled the study, ignoring Kaelan's call. She ran, her feet pounding on the hardwood, until she reached the glass-walled sunroom. It was the only room in the house that felt open. It was a clear, cold night, and a full, brilliant moon hung in the black sky, bathing the room in silver light. Rowan was there, his face pressed against the glass, watching the moon. It's pretty, she said, her voice trembling. Rowan didn't turn, but he pressed his small palm to the glass. Elowen stood next to him, her heart a wild, trapped bird. A leakin', a mate. It was all too much. She felt it then. A shift in the air. The same prickling on her skin as in the training yard. Intent. Rowan, she said, her voice sharp. Move away from the glass. Now. The boy looked at her, his silver eyes wide with confusion. Crash. It was not one rogue. It was three. They didn't burst through the glass like the last one. They were different. Smarter. They moved with a military precision, shattering the glass in two places and vaulting in, fanning out. They were not the wild, frenzied rogues. These were hunters, and their eyes, black and cold, were fixed on her. Run! Elowen screamed, shoving Rowan toward the solid inner wall. Get your father. Yell! Rowan, for the first time, did exactly as he was told. He scrambled away, screaming a name, Papa, Papa. But the hunters were too fast. One cut him off, grabbing the boy by the front of his shirt. The second one lunged at Elowen. She didn't run. She remembered Kaelan's lesson. Block. She dodged, spinning out of the way, just as his claws ripped through the air where she had been. The third one, the largest, just watched. He was the leader. The one holding Rowan snarled, lifting him. The pup for the prize, he growled, his voice a wet rasp. No. Elowen yelled. The second hunter came at her again. She grabbed a heavy, iron fireplace poker. She swung. It connected with his arm with a wet crack of bone. The hunter roared in pain, but it only enraged him. He backhanded her. The force sent her flying. She slammed into the stone wall, her head striking the rock. The room exploded in white, sharp points of light. Pain, blinding and hot. She heard Rowan scream. She heard the leader laugh. She is not even awake. The alpha's new pet is weak. Through the haze of pain, Elowen saw the second hunter, his arm hanging at a weird angle, stalking toward her. He was pulling a knife. A silver one. Weak. Elowen spat blood in her mouth. And then the roar came. It was not Kaelan. It was a beast. The double doors to the sunroom exploded off their hinges. Kaelan stood there, but it was not Kaelan. He was massive, 9 feet tall, covered in thick black fur, his body a twisted, powerful map of muscle and rage. His silver eyes were not eyes. They were burning, primal lights. He was on 2 legs, but he was all wolf. The full shift. The hunter with the broken arm didn't even have time to turn. The beast moved. It was a blur. One massive clawed hand swiped. The hunter's head left his body. It was a slaughter. The leader, seeing the full shift, snarled, now. The hunter holding Rowan threw the boy at the glass wall and ran for the broken window. But the beast was faster. It ignored the escaping hunter. It leaped, catching Rowan in midair, its massive, furred body shielding the child as they crashed to the ground. Elowen screamed, thinking the monster had him. But the beast uncurled, gently pushing Rowan, who was unharmed, behind its massive legs. A protective, paternal move. The leader and the beast circled each other. You are uncontrolled, Kaelan, the leader sneered. A full moon shift. You are an animal. You are nothing. The beast roared, a sound that shook the glass. It lunged. The fight was horrible. It was not a fight. It was a primal execution. Claws and fangs. Tearing. Ripping. The sound of breaking bones and wet, tearing flesh. Elowen was frozen in terror. This was not the man who had held her hand. This was not the father who mourned his son. This was a monster. It was over in seconds. The leader was in pieces on the floor. And the beast turned. Its massive, furred head swiveled. Its glowing silver eyes, devoid of all humanity, landed on Elowen. It smelled the rogue's scent on her, where she'd been hit. It smelled the blood from her head. It smelled prey. It took a step toward her, a low, guttural growl rumbling in its chest. Kaelan, Elowen whimpered, her voice tiny. Kaelan, stop. It's me. The beast snarled, its lips curling back from its fangs. It was confused. Its mate smelled wrong. It lunged. Kaelan, Elowen screamed, her voice breaking. The beast stopped, its claws inches from her face. It froze. Her voice. It shuddered. A horrific, bone-grinding sound filled the room. The monster convulsed. It fell to its knees. The fur receded. The bones cracked and reshaped. In 30 seconds, The 9-foot monster was gone. Kaelan was left in its place, naked, covered in blood, his chest heaving. He looked at the carnage. He looked at his own hands, dripping red. Then he looked at Elowen. He saw the pure, undiluted terror in her eyes. Terror of him. It's true, he gasped, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He wasn't horrified by the fight. He was horrified that he almost hurt her. The bond. It was real. His wolf had known her, and her voice had been the only thing to pull him back from the feral rage. The doors burst open. Silas and 3 guards ran in, guns raised. They stopped, stunned at the gore. Alpha. Silas breathed, his eyes wide. Kaelan ignored him. He looked at Elowen, his silver eyes filled with a new, profound, and terrifying clarity. He is here, Silas said, his voice shaky. The rival Alpha. Volkov. He is at the front gate. Unarmed. He says he has come to parley. For her. Chapter 13. The man at the gate. The reek of blood and rogue filth was still thick in the air when Silas's words hung in the broken sunroom. He has come to parley. For her. Kaelan was a vortex of barely controlled chaos. The blood on his skin was not his own. His body was still trembling with the aftershocks of the forced shift. He looked at Elowen, at her terrified, pale face, at the cut on her head. Then he looked at the carnage he had wrought. Get her to the safe room, he snarled at Silas, not looking at him. Lock her in. No. The word was quiet, but it sliced through the room. Kaelan's head snapped to her. The silver in his eyes was still wild. This is not a debate, Elowen. You are a target. You will be secured. And what will you do? She shot back, her voice shaking but hard. Trade me? Will you discuss my awakening like I'm a piece of land you're fighting over? I am done being a thing. I am done being a secret. He's here for me. I will face him. She was terrified. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to let this monster who was also a man protect her. But the Elowen who ran was gone. She had been shattered along with the glass. Kaelan stared at her, a new, strange light dawning in his wild eyes. It was not anger. It was a raw, stunned respect. It is unwise, Silas rumbled, his hand on the weapon at his side. It is necessary, Kaelan said, his voice dropping. He turned to Silas. Clean this up. Double the perimeter. Give me my clothes. He looked at Elowen. 5 minutes. Then you'll stand by my side, and you will not speak. The long drive to the front gate was silent, the electric cart humming in the pre-dawn chill. Kaelan, now in a clean black shirt and pants, drove. He radiated a lethal, contained energy. Elowen sat beside him, her hands clenched so tight her nails bit into her palms. The main gate was a fortress of iron. Just outside its boundary, illuminated by harsh floodlights, stood a single man. He was not what she expected. He was not a brute. He was tall, dressed in a long, dark coat, his hair a startling blonde white. He was handsome, almost elegant, with a charismatic, easy smile. His eyes, even from this distance, seemed to warm the air. This was Volkov. Kaelan stopped the cart just inside the gate. They were separated by 20 feet of iron bars. Alpha Kaelan, Volkov's voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an accent. It carried, easily in the cold air. A difficult night, I see. My apologies. My scouts tend to be overzealous. You sent them to die. Kaelan's voice was a low growl. I sent them for information, Volkov corrected, his smile never wavering. He looked past Kaelan, his eyes landing on Elowen. His smile vanished. His face was filled with a sudden, profound reverence. Awe. It is true, he breathed. He took a step closer, his gaze fixed on her. The lost blood, the dormant mark. She is not for you, Kaelan snarled, stepping half in front of her. She is not for you, Kaelan, Volkov said, his voice hardening. You, who keeps her a prisoner. You, whose beast almost tore her apart. Did you know, he said, his voice dropping, speaking to Elowen, that a true mate bond calms the wolf? His beast should kneel to you, but he cannot control it. He is broken. A true alpha would awaken you. He just wants to possess you. He offered his hand, as if through the bars. Come with me, Elowen. I offer you sanctuary. I offer you a choice. I offer you yourself. I will help you awaken. I will help you find your wolf. It was a perfect seduction. He was offering her everything Kaelan refused. Elowen looked at this handsome, reasonable man. He was a liar. He was a murderer. He had sent men to kill her. She looked up past the gate, past Volkov, to the high tower of the Alpha's wing. In the window, a small, pale face was watching. Rowan. That small face gave her strength. She stepped out from behind Kaelan. Her head throbbed. Her body ached. But her voice was clear. He sent them to me, she said, her voice ringing in the cold. Volkov's eyes widened. He sent them to my child's playroom, she continued, her voice gaining strength. You call yourself an alpha. You are nothing but a coward, sending shadows to do your work. You are a thief. You want to take what you cannot earn. She stepped up, standing shoulder to shoulder with Kaelan. She put her hand on the iron bar. I am not lost, she said, her voice lethal. I am not dormant. I am here, and I am his. She pointed, not at Kaelan, at Rowan. I belong to the pup you try to terrorize. Now get off this land, before the real alpha decides to finish what your scout started. The silence was absolute. Volkov's handsome face had gone pale. His eyes, no longer warm, were chips of blue ice. Kaelan was staring at Elowen, his breath caught in his throat. She hadn't claimed him. She had claimed his son. She had declared herself Luna, not as a mate, but as a protector. Volkov's polite mask cracked. A deep, guttural snarl escaped him. You have made your choice, dormant one. You have chosen the broken beast. You will regret it. He turned, a blur of motion, and was gone, swallowed by the dark forest. Kaelan said nothing. He just looked at Elowen, at the tiny woman who had just declared war on his behalf. Get in the cart, he said, his voice rough with an emotion she could not name. We're going back. Chapter 14. The Fire and the Flood. The ride back was a humming, electric silence. The adrenaline was fading, leaving Elowen shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Kaelan's presence beside her was a furnace of unspent rage and something else. Something possessive and raw. He didn't take her to her room. He marched her to his study, the same room where she had learned the truth. He kicked the door shut. He didn't turn on the lights. The room was lit only by the gray, watery dawn. He rounded on her, his face a mask of shadows. What in the hell did you think you were doing? He roared. I was doing what you couldn't, she shot back, the terror replaced by a sudden, white-hot fury. I was ending it. I was giving him an answer. You gave him a target, he yelled, slamming his fist onto the desk. You painted a bullseye on your back. You stood there and you claimed my pack, my son. Someone had to, she screamed. You were just standing there, letting him call you a beast, letting him seduce me. He was right. Kaelan exploded. The words were torn from him, raw and bleeding. I am a beast. I almost killed you tonight, Elowen. My wolf, my own soul, saw you as prey, and you, with your human fragility, you stopped it. You stopped me. How? He grabbed her, his hands clamping down on her shoulders. He wasn't gentle. He was desperate. How did you do it? He seethed, shaking her. What are you? I'm the woman you are terrified of, she cried, pushing against his chest. You are not afraid of Volkov. You are not afraid of your beast. You are afraid of this. She splayed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. The spark. It was there. A roaring, crackling fire that consumed the air. You are a coward, Kaelan, she spat, tears of rage and fear blurring her vision. You are so wrapped up in your grief, in the wife you lost, that you cannot see the woman who is right here. You would rather be a monster than a man, because being a man means you have to feel this. His breath hitched. His silver eyes, wide with shock, stared down at her. Say it, she whispered, her voice breaking. Say that you feel nothing. He was trapped. His wolf was warring with his grief. The man was warring with the alpha. I feel, he rasped, his voice a broken thing. I feel rage. I feel agony. I feel. He lowered his head. His forehead rested against hers. She could feel the tremor running through his entire, massive body. I feel you, he confessed, and it is killing me. This was the true confession. This was the point of no return. His hands slid from her shoulders, one moving to her back, pulling her flush against him, the other cupping her face. His calloused thumb brushed the cut on her head. He was going to kiss her. This was it. The culmination of the spark, the fight, the bond. Kaelan, she breathed. BZZT. BZZT. His phone, in his pocket, vibrated. A harsh, mechanical intrusion. The spell shattered. He stiffened, pulling back. The alpha mask slammed down, cold and hard. He ripped the phone from his pocket. He read the text. The blood drained from his face. He went utterly, terrifyingly still. Alpha. Silas's voice crackled, tinny and panicked, from the phone speaker. He's not at the gate. He was never at the gate. That was not Volkov. Kaelan's eyes, wide with a new, dawning horror, flew to the window. What do you mean, not Volkov? He growled. It was a projection, an illusion, Alpha, a scent marker. The real Volkov, he's in the East Wing. Alpha, he has the pup. He has Rowan. The bottom fell out of Elowen's world. It was a trap, she whispered. Kaelan didn't answer. He was already moving. He grabbed her arm, his grip a band of steel, and threw open the study door. He used me, Kaelan snarled, to draw you out. And he used the parley to get to my son. He was dragging her, running down the hall. He has my son. Chapter 15. The empty room. They ran. Kaelan's long, powerful strides were almost too fast for her to follow, his grip on her arm bruising. The house was in chaos. Alarms were blaring inside the walls, a silent, deep thrumming that was for the pack, not for intruders. Where are they? Elowen panted, her head swimming. The East Wing. Rowan's old nursery, Kaelan growled. He was a creature of pure, focused rage. The man from the study was gone, replaced by the Alpha. A sentimental choice. Volkov is mocking me. They rounded the corner into the East Wing. It was silent. The alarm was not blaring here. It was a trap. Kaelan stopped, pulling Elowen behind him. He sniffed the air. His body went rigid. He's here, he whispered. They crept down the hall, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They reached the nursery. The door was open, just a crack. A small, whimpering sound came from inside. Rowan. Kaelan shouldered the door open, ready for a fight, ready for a monster. The room was empty, except for Rowan, who was sitting in the middle of the floor, unharmed, crying. Papa, he wailed, scrambling to his feet. Kaelan rushed in, sweeping his son up in his arms, his silver eyes darting to every corner. He crushed the boy to his chest, burying his face in his son's hair. You are safe. You are safe. Kaelan, Elowen said, her voice a cold whisper. He looked at her. She was standing in the doorway, staring at the small, carved wooden crib. It's a trap, she said again. He's not here. He was here, Kaelan said, his eyes scanning the room. I can smell him. He left him. Why? Because he didn't want him, Elowen said, a terrible, cold certainty settling in her gut. The scent hit her then. Not Kaelan's pine and ozone. Not the old, dusty smell of the nursery. It was a new scent. Spiced. Musky. Wrong. It was behind her. She turned. A hand clamped over her mouth. A cloth pressed hard against her nose and mouth. The smell was acrid, chemical. Volkov stood in the hallway, his blue eyes no longer charming, but flat and cold as a shark's. He was not alone. Two massive, silent men were with him. You see Alpha, Volkov said, his voice a calm, cruel murmur as Elowen's legs began to buckle. You both made a mistake. Kaelan stood frozen in the nursery, his son in his arms. He was in a doorway, 10 feet away. You, Volkov said to Kaelan, thought your son was the prize. You thought I was like you, that I would steal your legacy. He pulled Elowen back, her body slumping against his. His other hand produced a syringe, the needle long and silver. He plunged it into her neck. Elowen gave a single, muffled cry. Her vision blurred, the edges turning dark. No, Kaelan roared. He started to move, to lunge. Ah, Volkov said. His two guards stepped forward, blocking the nursery door, their hands up. They were holding nothing. One more step, Volkov said, and I will give the order. My men are in the power core. They will detonate the gas lines. This entire wing will be rubble. You and your pup will be ash. Kaelan stopped. He was trapped. He was holding his son, and he was being checkmated. And you, Volkov whispered, his lips against Elowen's ear as her consciousness faded. You thought you were a protector. You thought you could choose. He looked at Kaelan, his smile a thin, cruel line. She was a prize. But now she's a weapon. My weapon. Kaelan's face was a mask of pure, primal agony. He was forced to choose. His pack, his son, or his mate. Elowen, he roared. But she was gone. Her eyes rolled back, and she went limp in Volkov's arms. A fair trade, Kaelan, Volkov sneered. He began to walk backward, his guards moving with him, never taking their eyes off the alpha. Your son, for your future. I think I have the better part of the deal. They vanished into the shadows of the hall. Kaelan was left standing in the nursery, his son sobbing in his arms. The woman who had just confessed her feelings, the woman his wolf now screamed for, gone. He had his son, but he had lost everything. He threw his head back and roared, not a sound of rage, but of pure, soul-shattering loss. Chapter 16. The Scent of Ash. The silence in the nursery was a physical weight. It was a suffocating, heavy blanket that smelled of Elowen's terror and Volkov's cold, spiced triumph. Kaelan stood frozen, his son small, hot tears soaking into his shirt. Rowan was clinging to him, his entire body a single, vibrating knot of fear. He's gone, Rowan whispered, his voice the same rusty, broken thing Elowen had first unbound. He took her. For a long, agonizing moment, Kaelan was not the alpha. He was not the beast. He was just a man, standing in the rubble of his second great failure. He saw the trap he had walked into. He felt the sharp edges of the checkmate. He tasted the metallic tang of defeat. He had been forced to choose, and Volkov had stolen the choice anyway. But the grief this time was not a cold, paralyzing thing. It was hot. It was a furnace of pure, undiluted rage. He had failed his first mate because the world was cruel. He had failed Elowen because he had been a fool. Silas. Kaelan's roar was not a human sound. It was a command that rattled the very walls, a sound of breaking glass and pure authority. The man was at the door in seconds, his golden eyes wide, taking in the empty room, the sobbing child, the thunderous fury on his alpha's face. He's gone. She's taken. I know, Kaelan growled. He handed Rowan to his guard, an agonizing, tearing motion. Rowan shrieked, his small hands grasping, but Kaelan's arms were already empty. Take him to the safe room. The real one. Seal it. Do not open it until I return, or until I am dead. Do you understand me, Silas? Silas nodded, his face grim. Alpha. The drug. What if? He won't kill her. Kaelan snarled, the words ripping from his throat. He stalked from the nursery, his long strides eating up the hallway. Not yet. He wants her awake. He wants to break her bond to me. He thinks he can steal her. This was the core of his rage. It was not just an abduction. It was a violation. Volkov was not just stealing a person. He was trying to sever a part of Kaelan's own soul. He reached his study, his movements sharp, economical. He grabbed a heavy, dark jacket. He grabbed a satellite phone. And he grabbed a long, wicked-looking blade, sheathed in worn leather. Alpha, you cannot go alone, Silas protested, holding the still-crying Rowan. His men are still on the grounds. It is a trap. Of course it's a trap, Kaelan spat, shoving the blade into a loop on his belt. He wants me to follow. He wants the broken, grieving Alpha to come charging in, blinded by rage. Then, what will you give him? Kaelan stopped at the door. He turned, and the man was gone. His silver eyes were glowing. The beast was just under the surface, a predator held in check by a single, burning purpose. "The beast," he whispered, his voice a low, chilling promise. "I will give him the monster he has been so desperate to meet. He thinks I am broken. He thinks I cannot control my wolf." A low, humorless laugh rumbled in his chest. "I have not been controlling it, Silas. I have been caging it. Volkov has just handed me the key." He looked at his son. "I will bring her home, Rowan. I promise you." Kaelan was gone, not out the front door. He went to the great, shattered window of the sunroom, the place of the last attack. He stood on the edge, the cold night air washing over him. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He smelled her fear, her pain, and the cold, spiced scent of his enemy. He did not run. He hunted. He launched himself from the broken window, landing in the dark forest with a silence that belied his size. He was not a man anymore. He was a shadow, a promise of death, and he was following the bond. He would burn Volkov's entire world to the very ground. Chapter 17. The Dormant Cage. Consciousness returned like a cold, wet slap. Elowen's first sensation was cold. A deep, penetrating cold that seemed to be coming from the ground itself. She was on stone, hard and unforgiving. Her second sensation was fire. A strange, chemical heat was burning in her veins. It was not a fever. It was an energy. It was the drug. She awakens. Good. That voice. Smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth. Elowen's eyes snapped open. She was not in a cage or a cell. She was in a clearing. Ancient, moss-covered stones stood in a circle around her, like the teeth of some long-dead giant. Torches, set on poles, cast a flickering, hellish orange light. The moon was high and full, a perfect silver coin, but its light felt wrong here. Volkov stood before her, not in his dark coat, but in something more ritualistic. A simple, dark tunic. He looked serene. Where is he? The Elowen rascal, her throat dry. Where is Kaelan? The broken alpha? Volkov smiled, a sad, pitying expression that made her blood run colder than the stone. He is, I imagine, tearing his home apart. Or perhaps he is running into one of the many traps I left for him. He is predictable. What do you want? She said, pushing herself up on her elbows. The drug made the world tilt. I want justice, Elowen. He walked toward her, his movements fluid like a dancer. I want to correct a great wrong. You see, this, he gestured to the standing stones, is a place of awakening. And you, my dear, are long overdue. He knelt in front of her. His blue eyes were hypnotic. I know your story. I know all about you. The foster homes, the running, the no attachment rule, the profound, aching loneliness. Stop it, she whispered. You built a prison for yourself, he continued, his voice a gentle, terrible lullaby. You kept the world out because you knew, deep down, that you were different, that you did not belong. He told her a story then, a story of his own pack, generations ago, a story of a young, dormant blood woman, just like her, who was stolen by a rival alpha. He awoke her, Volkov said, his voice laced with an ancient pain. He claimed her, and our pack withered. The bloodline thinned. We lost our connection to the moon. She was our future, and he stole her. Elowen stared, the pieces clicking into place. You're not an alpha. You're a zealot. I am a guardian, he corrected, his voice hardening. Kaelan, he is a brute. He is a beast of rage and blood. He lost his fated mate. His wolf is broken. He cannot awaken you. He can only possess you. He would keep you dormant forever, a human pet, because he is terrified of what you are. And what am I? She challenged, her voice trembling. You are ours, he said. His hand went to his belt, and he produced a small, carved wooden box. This drug, it is not a poison. It is a catalyst. It is designed to burn away the human shell, to prepare the vessel. He opened the box. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a knife. It was not silver. It was black, obsidian, and it seemed to drink the torchlight. Fear cold and sharp, cut through the chemical haze. You're not going to waken me, she breathed. You're going to sacrifice me. Volkov laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Sacrifice? No, this is not a sacrifice. This is a transfer. Your power, Elowen, cannot be trusted to you, but it can be claimed by a true alpha in the sight of the moon. He stood. His men, the silent, massive ones, were gathered in the shadows of the stones. They were watching. This was a ceremony. He was going to kill her here in front of his pack and somehow steal her power. In that moment, she knew Kaelan was not coming. Not in time. She was not a prize. She was not a mate. She was fuel. The drug in her veins burned. It felt like it was clawing its way up her throat. She had to fight. She had to live. Chapter 18. The Price of the Bond. The world exploded in a black, furred, and white-hot hurricane of rage. A roar, not of a man or a wolf, but of a god, shattered the clearing. It was a sound of pure, primal loss. Before Volkov or his guards could react, the beast was on them. It was not the 9-foot monster from the sunroom. It was Kaelan, on all fours, his body a twisted, perfect blend of man and wolf. He was a black shadow, a blur of claws and fangs, his silver eyes burning with a light that was not the moon's. He had bypassed the traps. He had ignored the guards. He had followed the searing, frantic pull of the bond, and it had led him here. One of Volkov's guards lunged. Kaelan didn't slow. He tore the man's throat out without changing stride, his momentum carrying him, a tide of blood and vengeance. Kaelan, Elowen screamed, scrambling to her feet, the world tilting. You see, Volkov yelled, his voice tight with a sudden, manic glee. He held the obsidian knife high. You see what he is? He is not an alpha. He is an animal. He cannot even control his shift. This was the public revelation. Volkov's pack, gathered in the shadows, watched as their leader stood calm, and Kaelan was a monster. But Volkov had miscalculated. Kaelan stopped. He stood, his body still a hybrid of terror and power. He was panting, his fangs dripping. He looked at the blood on his claws. He looked at Volkov. Then he looked at Elowen. He saw her terror, the drug in her system, the knife, and a deep, profound sanity settled over his feral features. The glow in his eyes did not dim. It focused. He was not a beast. He was an executioner. He is not my alpha. Elowen spat at Volkov, her voice shaking. He is mine. That word, mine, broke the stalemate. Kaelan lunged. Volkov was ready. He was no coward. He met Kaelan's charge, but not with claws. He was a fighter. He ducked. He weaved. He pulled a long, silver-etched spear from where it lay hidden by the stones. The fight was brutal. It was the raw, uncontrolled power of the beast against the cold, calculated skill of the warrior. Kaelan was stronger, faster, but Volkov was smarter. He used Kaelan's rage against him, turning his lunges, forcing him to overextend. You are nothing, Volkov snarled, parrying a claw swipe with the silver-bound shaft. You are a failure. You let your first mate die, and now you will let this one die. Kaelan roared, the sound full of pain. The taunt worked. His past trauma, his deepest fear, resurfaced. He lost control. He charged a blind, raging bull. It was the opening Volkov needed. But Volkov did not aim for the heart of the beast. He spun. In one fluid, horrific motion, he pivoted away from Kaelan and threw the spear. Not at the alpha. At Elowen. Time stopped. Elowen saw the silver point arcing toward her. She was frozen. The drug, the fear. She was dead. Kaelan saw it. The beast inside him, the one that had almost preyed on her, did the one thing it should not have been able to do. It chose. It did not try to kill Volkov. It did not try to save itself. It moved. It was a blur. A black shadow. Kaelan appeared in front of Elowen, his back to her. He took the spear. It hit him with a sound like a wet thud. It went deep, right through his back, just under the shoulder blade. Aim for the heart. He gasped. A choked, human sound. He stood there for a long, impossible second. Volkov laughed. A short, sharp bark of triumph. As Kaelan crumpled to his knees, the transformation broke. The fur receded. The claws vanished. The bones snapped. When he fell onto the cold stone, he was just a man. He was Kaelan, naked, bleeding, a spear shaft protruding from his back. He looked at her, his silver eyes wide with shock, with pain, and with a terrible, profound love. Elowen, he choked. No, she whispered. No, no. This was it. The lowest point. The true descent. He was dying. He had chosen her, and he was dying. In the end, Volkov was laughing. Kaelan was bleeding out on the stone. And Elowen screamed. The drug in her veins, the fire that had been building, met the agonizing, soul-tearing snap of the fated bond as it frayed. Her scream tore through the night. It was not a human sound. It was not a sound of grief. It was a sound of birth. And it was a roar. Chapter 19. The fire from the vein. The scream was not a human sound. It was the sound of a soul being torn from its sheath. It ripped from Elowen's throat, a raw, primal roar that vibrated the very stones of the clearing. It was a sound of agony, of loss, and of a power so profound it cracked the cold night air. Volkov laughed, his chest swelling with triumph. Yes, grieve him, girl. Let your pain call the wolf. Let it. His words died. Elowen's scream changed. The note of grief was consumed by a deeper, guttural tone. It was a sound of rage. What is this? Volkov whispered, his smile faltering. Elowen was on her knees, her hands clawing at the stone. But her hands were changing. Her nails were thickening, darkening, lengthening into black, curved talons. The drug in her veins was not a poison. It was a key. The trauma was the force turning it. A white-hot fire, hotter than the chemical burn, tore up her spine. It was an agony beyond description. Her bones snapped. Her spine elongated with a wet, tearing sound. Her shoulders broadened, muscles bunching and reforming under her skin. No, Volkov breathed, taking a step back. This is not the ritual. Kaelan, Elowen gasped, but the name came out as a growl. She looked at him. He was dying. The spear in his back was a grotesque black spike. His silver eyes were dimming, his lifeblood pooling on the ancient stone. He was watching her, his face a mask of agony, not from the spear, but from her pain. His dying was the last straw. The final, brittle piece of her old, human self shattered. Mine. The roar was not hers. It was the wolf's. She threw her head back. Her face contorted. Her teeth ached, growing, sharpening. Fur, the color of shadow and silver, burst from her skin. The world exploded. It did not go dark. It became brighter. She could see the individual hairs on Volkov's arm, 20 feet away. She could smell the fierce sweat of his distant guards, the damp rot of the moss on the stones, the cold iron of the torches. And she could smell him. Kaelan. He smelled of pine, of ozone, and of the rich, copper and salt scent of his blood. And she could feel the bond. It was not a spark. It was a thick silver cord, and right now it was fraying. It was snapping, thread by thread, as his life left him. No, she snarled. She was not on her knees. She was on her haunches. She was a creature of power, of moonlight and shadow. She was leaking. Claim her. Volkov yelled at his men. She is unbound. She is ours. The guards hesitated, their eyes wide with a primal fear. Elowen ignored them. She ignored Volkov. She crawled, her new claws scraping the stone, to the man who had died for her. Kaelan, she growled. His name felt strange on her new, fanged tongue. She put her face close to his. His breathing was a shallow, wet rattle. She did not know how to heal. She had no magic. She was a nanny. She was a monster. The wolf inside her knew. The bond was a two-way street. He had given her his protection. She would give him her life. She put her new, clawed hand on the spear shaft. She did not pull it out. Instead, she leaned down and pressed her mouth to the gaping, bloody wound beside it. It was not a kiss. It was a claim. She breathed in, inhaling the scent of his blood, his soul. And then she breathed out. She poured the fire from her veins, the new, raw, untamed Leakin power, into his body. She was not healing him. She was remaking him, just as she had been remade. She was willing him to live. "You will not leave me," she commanded, the voice a dual harmony of woman and wolf. "You will not make me alone again." A pulse. A jolt. The silver cord of the bond snapped taut. Kaelan's eyes, which had closed, flew open. They were not dim. They were not silver. They were gold. A blazing, pure, molten gold. He healed him? Volkov stammered. The bond. It accepted her? Impossible. Kaelan's hand, now clawed, reached up. It wrapped around the spear shaft. With a single guttural roar, he tore the spear from his own body and threw it to the stone. The wound steamed. It sealed. He rose to his feet, not as a man, but as the alpha. He was not the out-of-control beast. He was a king. He looked at Elowen, at her furred, powerful new form. And for the first time, in the midst of blood and death, he smiled. "My mate," he growled. Then they turned shoulder to shoulder and faced the man who had tried to tear them apart. Chapter 20. The Dance of Two Wolves. Volkov was for the first time afraid. He saw his mistake. It was a fatal, arrogant miscalculation. He had not just brought a rival to the field. He had created his own doom. He had not stolen a dormant prize. He had awakened a Luna. He saw the man and the woman, the Alpha and the Luna, standing side by side. Kaelan was a hybrid of power, his body rippling with a controlled shift, his golden eyes burning with a focused, intelligent rage. Elowen was smaller, leaner, a shadow wolf, her silver streaked for seeming to drink the moonlight, her new, sharp mind alive with 1,000 new senses. And they were connected. "Kill them," Volkov shrieked, his voice cracking. "Kill them now. She is a monster, an abomination." His pack, the 6 remaining elite guards, finally moved. They were huge seasoned fighters. They drew their own silver blades, their faces grim. Kaelan did not give an order. He did not have to. He felt Elowen's intent. She was a flash of pure primal instinct. He lunged left. She lunged right. It was a dance. It was a slaughter. Kaelan was a wall of muscle and fury. He met the first 2 guards head-on. He was not the wild beast. He was the warrior. He used his claws, his fangs, but also his mind. He parried his silver blade with his hardened forearm, the metal screaming, and snapped the man's neck with his other hand. Elowen was a blur. She was new. She had no training, so she was completely unpredictable. A guard swung a heavy silver axe at her. She did not block. She did not dodge. She dropped. She fell flat to the stone, the axe whistling over her fur. And from the ground, she sprang up, not like a wolf, but like a panther. She landed on the man's back, her claws digging into his shoulders, her fangs finding the soft, unprotected pulse of his throat. She tore it out and landed silently, her new silver eyes already locking on the next threat. She could feel Kaelan. She felt his pain as a blade grazed his ribs. She felt his surge of triumph as he disemboweled another attacker. She felt his pride. In 30 seconds, the clearing was silent again, save for the gasps of the dying. The 6 guard were 6 piles of cooling meat, and Kaelan and Elowen stood in the center, panting, covered in blood that was not their own. Only Volkov remained. He was shaking. The obsidian knife was still in his hand, but it was useless. This is not right," he stammered, backing away. The ritual was sacred. This is a perversion. Kaelan stalked toward him. "You spoke of my grief," he growled, his voice a low, lethal engine. "You spoke of my failure. You were right." Volkov's back hit one of the ancient stones. He was trapped. "But my failure was my strength," Kaelan continued, his golden eyes pinning the terrified Alpha. "My grief taught me what loss is, and I will never lose anything again." He was going to kill him. Slowly. "Kaelan." Elowen's voice. It was a low growl, but it was her. He stopped. She walked to his side. She was limping. Her new form was not used to this. She looked at Volkov, at the zealot who had tried to sacrifice her. "This is not your kill," she growled. Her voice a strange, beautiful harmony. Kaelan looked at her, confused. "He is an alpha," she said. "He is a thief. He stole. He tried to steal me." She looked at Kaelan, her mate. "And he hurt you." She turned back to Volkov. "Your pack," she said, her voice carrying in the silent, bloody clearing. "They are watching. They are in the trees." Volkov's eyes widened in a flicker of hope. My pack. They are watching their alpha," Elowen said, "who hides behind a knife. Who let his men die. Who is a coward." She did not kill him. Kaelan did not kill him. Elowen stepped forward, her claws extended. She did not strike his throat. She slammed her open, furred palm into his chest. Her claws, long and sharp, tore through his tunic. But she did not rip his heart out. She ripped the alpha mark off his chest, a ceremonial pendant, a chain of carved stones. She tore his rank from him. "You are nothing," she spat. "You're not an alpha. You're not a guardian. You're just a man, and you are banished." Volkov stared, in horror, at the broken chain in her hand. He was unmanned, defeated. Kaelan understood. This was a fate worse than death for a creature like Volkov. To be left with nothing. The rustle in the trees was the sound of Volkov's pack, his witnesses accepting the judgment. They were melting away, abandoning their broken leader. Volkov just slid down the stone, a hollow, empty man. The fight was over. Chapter 21. The moon's heavy light. The silence that fell was profound. It was heavier than the cold. It was heavier than the scent of death that saturated the clearing. Volkov was a broken, whimpering thing against the stone, forgotten. The true threat was gone. Elowen's body ached. The transformation, the fight, the adrenaline, it was all fading, leaving a deep, bone-weary pain. Her new muscles were screaming. She swayed. In a second, Kaelan was there. His strong arm, still half-furred, wrapped around her waist, pulling her against his solid, warm body. "You are hurt," he rumbled, his voice no longer the alpha's, but the man's. His golden eyes were fading, the familiar, beloved silver returning. "I am new," she breathed, leaning her head against his shoulder. His skin was hot. His scent was overwhelming, pine and victory and mate. They stood there for a long moment, two halves of a whole, surrounded by the carnage of their first battle. Kaelan looked down at her. He saw the silver-streaked fur, the new, fierce power in her stance. He saw the exhaustion. "It is over," he said, his voice rough. He had Rowan," she whispered, her voice cracking. The memory, the terror was still there. "He is safe," Kaelan said, his voice a vow. "Silas has him. He is safe. We are safe." He reached up, his hand still clawed, and gently, so gently, he brushed the matted fur from her face. It was the first, truly tender touch. The bond, which had snapped taut to save his life, now flooded them. It was not a spark. It was not a fire. It was an ocean. Elowen gasped. She could feel everything. She felt his relief, so vast it was almost painful. She felt his bone-deep exhaustion. She felt his grief for his first Luna, a scarred-over, old wound. And she felt his new, terrifying, all-consuming love for her. He felt her fear of abandonment, her deep, aching loneliness, her new, fierce, protective rage. A single, hot tear traced a path down her furred cheek. "Kaelan," she whispered. "I know," he breathed. He knew everything. He lowered his head. His own transformation was receding. His fangs shortened, his fur vanished. He was a man again, naked, bloody, and whole. Her own body was shuddering. The shift was unstable. "Elowen," he said, his voice firm. "Let go. Come back to me." She didn't know how. "It's okay," he murmured. "I have you." He pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her, and he held her. He held her as her bones cracked and reformed again, the agony of the D-shift tearing a cry from her. She was shrinking, the fur receding, the claws pulling back. When it was over, she was just Elowen, naked, trembling, and covered in blood, held in the arms of the Alpha who had saved her, and who she had saved in turn. "You're cold," he growled. He stripped off his own bloody jacket, the one he had dropped in the fight, and wrapped it around her. It was huge. It smelled of him. He pulled her flush against his chest. The full moon, the one that had witnessed her death and her birth, beat down on them. This was the claiming. "Mine," he growls, the word a possessive, final, beautiful promise. He tilted her chin up. His silver eyes were a storm of love, of desire, of a future she had never, ever believed she could have. He did not kiss her. Not yet. He pressed his forehead to hers. "We go home," he said. "We go home, to our son." That word, our, it healed every scar. It filled every empty space. She was not a nanny. She was not a prisoner. She was a Luna. She was a mother. And she was finally home. The rest could wait. Chapter 22. The Mark of the Soul. The journey back was a blur. Elowen did not walk. Kaelan carried her, his strides long and impossibly silent, a shadow moving through the dark woods. She was wrapped in his jacket, her cheek pressed against the hard, warm wall of his chest. She was shaking. The aftershocks of the transformation, of the birth, were violent. Every nerve ending was a live wire, screaming with new information. The world was too loud. She could hear the frantic heartbeat of a rabbit hiding in a burrow 50 yards away. She could smell the cold, clean scent of water from a distant stream. She could feel the steady, powerful thud-thud of Kaelan's heart beneath her ear, a rhythm that was already becoming her anchor in this new, overwhelming sea of sensation. He did not take her to the house. He moved past the shattered sunroom, past the cold, modern lines of his fortress. He climbed. He moved with a purpose, his arms like bands of steel, until he reached a high, flat crag of rock that overlooked the entire valley. The moon was a queen in the sky, huge and white, bathing the stone in pure, silver light. Below, the estate was a dark shape, its lights extinguished. He set her down, gently, on a flat stone that was sheltered from the wind. He stood before her, a king, bloody, magnificent, and hers. "Elowen," he said. His voice was a low rumble, the sound of the earth itself. I'm... She stammered. She was still trembling. The shift had been a fire. This, the aftermath, was a cold, frightening void. "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be this." He knelt in front of her. He took her face in his hands, his palms rough and warm. His silver eyes, clear and sane, searched hers. He saw the fear. He saw the new, wild wolf peering out from behind her human terror. "You are not a monster," he said, his voice a raw, final promise. "You are my mate. You are my Luna. You are the other half of my soul." It's too much," she whispered, a tear sliding hot down her cold cheek. The bond. "Kaelan, I feel everything. It's a storm. I know." He brushed the tear away with his thumb. "It is for me too. For 3 years, I have been empty, a void, and now, there is you. You are a flood. You are a fire, and I am drowning in you." This was his confession. This was his heart, raw and open. "I need," she choked, her new, sharp claws, now retracted, ached under her fingernails. "I need an anchor. I am your anchor," he vowed. "And you are my grace." He did not ask. He showed her. He tilted his head, exposing the strong, clean line of his throat. A gesture of pure, ultimate trust. The bond is forged, Elowen, but is not sealed. It is a promise. This is the vow. She knew what he was offering. She knew what it meant. "You mark me," she whispered. His eyes flared. "And you mark me, soul to soul. There is no going back. Not ever." She did not feel fear. She felt certainty, a deep, profound yes that settled the shaking in her bones. This was the one true thing she had ever known. She leaned forward. Her fangs, small but sharp, ached. She pressed her face to his throat. She breathed him in. Pine. Ozone. Mate. She bit down. A jolt, white-hot and pure, shot through her. His blood was on her tongue. It was not a taste. It was life. It was his life. She felt it. A flood. His memories. His pain. The face of his first Luna. A beautiful, laughing woman. The agony of her loss. The hollow, gray years. The first time he saw Elowen in the foyer, bleeding on his floor. The spark. The fear. The love, so vast, so deep it was an ocean. A groan, half agony, half ecstasy, was torn from his throat. He pulled her away, his eyes black with desire, a small trickle of his blood on her chin. Now he growled, Mine. She was ready. She turned her head, offering the one place she had never, ever bared to anyone. Her neck, her pulse, her life. He did not hesitate, his face buried in her hair, his hot breath a promise against her skin. Then, his fangs, sharper and stronger than hers, sank into her. Pain, white-hot, blinding, exquisite pain that lasted for a single, infinite second. And then, rapture. The world did not go black. It exploded into pure, silver light. His soul poured into her. It was not a memory. It was him, his strength, his power, his loyalty, his wolf. The bond was no longer a chaotic ocean. It was a sun. It was a fixed, blazing point of gravity. It was the center of her new universe. It settled. The fire, the storm, the flood, it all calm, becoming a deep, powerful, steady sea. She was Elowen. She was a wolf. She was a woman. She was his. He lapped at the wound, his tongue gentle, healing. The pain was gone. All that was left was peace. He pulled back, his silver eyes shining with a fierce, possessive, and utterly complete love. Luna, he breathed, and for the first time in her entire, lonely life, Elowen knew exactly who she was. Chapter 23. The Sound of a Name. The house was dark and silent, but it was a new silence. It was not the cold, sterile emptiness of before. It was the quiet of a fortress that had held. Silas was waiting in the grand foyer, his scarred face a mask of iron control. But when he saw them, Kaelan, still bloody, and Elowen, wrapped in her alpha's jacket, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with a new, silver light, the man's discipline broke. A choked sound escaped him. Alpha, my Luna. He bowed his head, a gesture of profound respect. He is safe. Kaelan's voice was a low growl, a demand. Yes, Alpha. He is in the primary safe room. He has not stopped calling for you. Silas's gaze lingered on Elowen, on the new, faint mark on her throat, a crescent of perfect, new-healed skin. He knew. Take us, Kaelan commanded. The walk to the safe room was not a walk of fear. It was a procession. Silas unsealed the massive, titanium door. The hiss of hydraulics was the only sound. The room was small, lit by a single low light. And on a cot, in the corner, a small form was curled, his face buried in a pillow. Rowan, Kaelan's voice was soft. The small head snapped up. Rowan's silver eyes, wide and terrified, flew to his father. He saw the blood. He saw the exhaustion. Papa, he cried, scrambling off the cot. He ran, but halfway across the small room, he stopped. He saw her. Elowen was standing just behind Kaelan, her heart a trapped, frantic bird. This was the last test, the final, most important battle. Rowan stared at her. He tilted his head. He was sending her. She no longer smelled just of rain and human frailty. She smelled of the moon. She smelled of wolf. She smelled like Kaelan. Rowan's small face, which had been bright with relief, crumpled. His eyes filled with a new, terrified confusion. This was not his Elowen. This was a stranger. This was one of them. He took a step back. Elowen's heart shattered. This was the one rejection she would not survive. The new power, the bond, the title of Luna, it was all ash in her mouth. She did not care about the pack. She did not care about the power. She cared about the boy. Kaelan, feeling her agony through the bond, as if it were his own, took a step toward his son. Rowan, no, Elowen whispered, her voice a plea. She put a hand on Kaelan's arm. Mine. She took a slow, painful step into the room, her new senses screaming. She could smell his fear. It was a sharp, coppery scent. She knelt. She dropped to one knee, making herself small, making herself vulnerable. She was the Luna of the pack, but she was a supplicant to this child. She held out her hand, the one that was not marked, not scarred, her human hand. Rowan, she whispered. Her voice was just hers, not the wolf's. It's me. It's just me. Rowan looked at her hand. He looked at her face. He saw the same eyes. He saw the same woman who had held him, who had fed him, who had read him stories. He looked at Kaelan, who stood, frozen, his heart in his throat. Then he looked back at Elowen. He saw the mark on her neck. He saw the new, strange light in her silver-gilt eyes. He saw safety. He ran. He did not run to his father. He launched himself across the last few feet and slammed into Elowen's chest, his small arms wrapping around her neck in a death grip. He buried his face in her hair. You're warm, he whispered, his voice thick. I'm here. Elowen choked, tears she did not know she had left streaming down her face. She wrapped her arms around his small, trembling body. He pulled back, just enough to look at her. His small, serious face was streaked with tears. His silver eyes, a perfect match for hers and his father's, were shining with a bright, new, unbroken light. He smiled, a real, actual child smile. Mom, he said. It was not a question. It was not a mistake. It was not a plea. It was a fact. It was a statement. It was a claiming. Elowen broke. A sob of pure, undiluted joy tore from her. She held him, and he held her back. Kaelan moved. He did not say a word. He knelt, his own body shaking with a relief so profound it was painful. He wrapped his massive, strong arms around both of them, pulling them into a fierce, protective, and complete embrace. The broken, shattered pieces of three lonely, damaged souls were finally whole. They were family. Chapter 24. The Weight of the Dawn. Elowen woke to warmth. It was not the electric, chaotic fire of the transformation. It was a deep, steady, real heat. She was in Kaelan's bed. The sheets were soft, the mattress a cloud. She was clean. Someone, Dr. Alana, she presumed, had tended to her. She was sore, a deep, pulling ache in muscles she never knew she possessed. It was the good pain of a battle won. She was alone in the bed. For a frantic, panicked second, her old world fear surged. He left. Then she felt it. The bond. It was not a storm. It was not a fire. It was a calm, steady, silver cord that stretched from her heart across the room. He was there. She sat up. Sunlight, bright, warm, golden sunlight, was streaming through the massive windows. The Alpha's wing was not a cage. It was a home. Kaelan stood at the window. He was not the brooding Alpha. He was not the blood-soaked beast. He was a man, dressed in simple gray trousers and a soft sweater. He was bathed in the morning light, his silver-streaked hair almost glowing. He was watching the sunrise. And he was not. He was not restless. He was at peace. He turned, as if he had felt her gaze. A smile. A real one. It was slow, and it transformed his harsh, beautiful face. It lit his silver eyes from within. "Good morning, my Luna," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble. Elowen blushed. The word Luna still felt too big. I feel. How do you feel? He asked, walking toward her. She stretched. Her body popped. Her new senses were quiet. They were not screaming. They were just part of her. She could feel the wolf, no longer a monster, but a steady, quiet strength settled in her bones. "I feel like me," she said, a small wonder in her voice. "Just more." He sat on the edge of the bed, his presence a comfort. He took her hand. "The pack will have questions. Volkov's pack. They are now leaderless. There is much work to do. The old Elowen would have flinched at the word work, at the responsibility. But the new Elowen just nodded. We will do it. Together. It was not a burden. It was a purpose. She was not a ghost in someone else's hallway. She was a queen in her own. First, Kaelan said, his eyes darkening with an emotion that was all man, there is one more thing to do. He leaned in. The kiss was not the desperate, frantic claiming of the night before. It was slow. It was tender. It was a promise. It tasted of coffee, of sunlight, and of home. It was a vow of 1,000 mornings, of 1,000 battles, of 1,000 quiet, peaceful nights. She kissed him back, pouring every bit of her new, whole soul into it. Mom, Papa. The door burst open. Rowan, in his pajamas, his black hair a wild mess, did not knock. He launched himself through the air. Kaelan broke the kiss, laughing a real deep laugh, and caught his son. Rowan landed on the bed between them, a wriggling, giggling, happy child. I'm hungry, he declared. And Silas said you're not allowed to be a beast anymore, Papa. Kaelan looked at Elowen, his silver eyes shining over his son's head. He's right. That part is retired. Elowen smiled. Good, because I'm hungry too. Rowan scrambled between them, snuggling under the covers, one small, warm hand in his father's, the other in his mother's. Elowen looked at the man she loved and the child who had called her into this new, wild, and perfect life. The shadows were gone. The cold was gone. This was the new equilibrium. This was not an end. It was the weight of a new, beautiful, and shared dawn. And it was just the beginning.